Tell me, have you ever met someone who seemed volatile, disorganized, and prone to extreme emotional outbursts, but only when they were cornered? That person likely wasn't the cold, smooth operator you read about. They were probably the sociopath, the wild card of the Dark Triad. You've heard of narcissists and psychopaths, but sociopaths, that's where it gets dangerous. For decades, I've sat in rooms with people who run the gamut of human darkness. Most people think of narcissism as vanity and psychopathy as murder, but the truth is far more subtle and far more prevalent. We're talking about the Dark Triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. The Machiavellianism often gets folded into the other two, but let's be direct. In the real world, the most unstable, unpredictable, and frankly the most frequently encountered danger is the sociopath. Why? Because the sociopath is often a product of environment, not just genetics. The psychopath is typically born with the wiring. They are the Ferrari with no brakes and a broken emotional gauge. The sociopath is often created by trauma, neglect, or severe environmental stress. They have a broken internal compass, but unlike the psychopath, they are capable of genuine, if fleeting, emotional attachment to a small circle. They can feel a twisted version of loyalty or anger, which makes them volatile and unpredictable. Let's use a simple analogy from my old job. The narcissist wants to be the lead actor. Everyone must watch, applaud, and adore them. Their goal is ego supply. The psychopath is the director, cold, calculated, never on screen, moving all the pieces for their own amusement or profit. Their goal is control. The sociopath is the stagehand who got drunk. They are impulsive, disorganized, prone to rage, and they'll destroy the set in a moment of frustration, often hurting themselves in the process. Their goal is immediate gratification. Let me tell you about Charlie. Charlie was a sociopath I interviewed years ago. He was a petty con artist. He didn't have the patience to run a long con. He'd charm a mark for an hour, get an immediate, small payoff, and then blow the money gambling within the day. His life was a series of impulsive, disorganized moves. He was capable of showing real, visceral fear when caught, which a pure psychopath would never display. He wasn't emotionally absent, he was emotionally dysregulated. This is the key difference. The sociopath's life is a constant, messy train wreck. Relatable example. The narcissistic boss gives the company a bad name through their demanding, over-the-top public behavior. The sociopathic employee gives the company a bad name by suddenly quitting mid-shift, smashing their laptop, and stealing petty cash out of the register. One is a strategic self-promoter. The other is an explosive environmental consequence. Have you ever seen someone ruin their own life repeatedly through sheer, self-destructive impulsivity? That's your sociopath. To truly protect yourself, you need a quick reference guide. We were going to compare these three core archetypes by their most telling flaws: their empathy and their impulse control. Archetype: empathy capacity, impact on others. Narcissist: damaged, selective. They see your pain, but only as it relates to them. It's a reflection of their power or a consequence of your flaws. Sociopath: low but present. They can attach to a small in-group, maybe a family member or a close friend. They're capable of a flicker of guilt, making them unstable. Psychopath: absent, cognitive only. They understand emotions intellectually, like reading a manual. They have no feeling of guilt or remorse. The most important cell in that table is the sociopath's capacity for low, but present empathy. This small, broken internal gauge is what makes them so unpredictable. They have just enough human feeling to create emotional turbulence. They can be prone to self-pity, suicidal ideation, and frantic attempts to reconcile after an outburst. The psychopath, on the other hand, is a flat line. They don't care enough to get that upset. This is where the sociopath truly stands alone. Narcissist: their impulses are controlled, mostly. They repress their shame and impulsively seek validation. Their rage is a controlled explosion designed to restore ego's supply. Psychopath. They have excellent impulse control. They plan, they wait, and they execute with precision. Their actions are always instrumental. They serve a calculated purpose. Sociopath. Poor to none. They live for the now. They'll commit a crime for instant gain, knowing they'll be caught because they lack the foresight and emotional regulation to resist the immediate temptation. Their aggression is often an uncoordinated burst of fury or frustration. Scientific insight. Psychopathy is strongly linked to a lack of response in the amygdala, the brain, sphere, and emotional center. Sociopathy is more often tied to environmental factors that create poor development in the prefrontal cortex, which controls impulse and executive function. In simple terms, the psychopath is broken at the level of feeling, the sociopath is broken at the level of thinking ahead. Reflective question. Do the destructive actions of the person you are thinking about seem well planned and efficient, or do they look like a series of increasingly desperate, sloppy reactions? The answer is a critical indicator of the type of danger you face. We need to drill down on the sociopath. Their defining trait is their environmental creation. They are not the apex predator, they are the survivor who learned to bite back in a harsh world. This leads to profound differences in their behavior and danger level. Environmental versus genetic. We talked about the origin. Because the sociopath's traits are often a response to trauma, they can sometimes form genuine, though often chaotic and intense, bonds. This is why a sociopath might commit a crime for a friend or family member, an action a narcissist would not risk for anyone but themselves, and a psychopath would only commit if it served their long-term, calculated goal. Their loyalties, though unstable, are real in the moment. Let me tell you about Marco. Marco was a sociopath involved in a series of car thefts. The thefts themselves were sloppy. Stolen cars were often recovered with fast food wrappers and easily traceable evidence left inside. But the real insight came when he was asked about his little sister. He genuinely choked up, showing real, raw emotion about wanting to get out of the lifestyle for her. His impulsivity and disorganization put him in constant danger, but he had an emotional anchor, however weak, a genuine connection to one person. The narcissist has no anchor except their ego, the psychopath has none at all. The volatile edge. Because of their low emotional control, sociopaths are often more prone to sudden, violent outbursts that are not calculated. They might get into a bar fight, start a screaming match in the workplace, or destroy property in a fit of pique. This makes them a high-friction, immediate danger. The psychopath is the silent fire that consumes your house over a year. The sociopath is the sudden kitchen grease fire that forces an immediate evacuation. Practical, real-life example. A sociopath might steal their colleague's lunch from the fridge on impulse, knowing they'll get caught, simply because they were hungry now and didn't want to buy their own. A narcissist would subtly steal the credit for a project to look better. A psychopath would meticulously plan a way to bankrupt the colleague to eliminate them as a rival. The level of planning and the sheer sloppiness is the tell. When you look at their history, is it a pattern of small, sudden crises, or a long, cold campaign of calculated moves? The volatility is the sociopath's signature. We've covered the narcissist's need for supply and the sociopath's impulsivity. Now, we have to talk about the psychopath's primary tool for entry: terrifying charm. This is an additional insight that often gets missed, but it's the most effective weapon in their arsenal. The psychopath's charm is not driven by the need to be loved, like the narcissist's, nor is it the temporary, unstable charisma of the sociopath trying to get something quick. The psychopath's charm is a weaponized social strategy. It is a mask of perfect humanity, meticulously crafted through years of observing genuine human behavior. They are masters of mirroring. They will instantly reflect your interests, your language, and your deepest needs to create an immediate, intense, and often intoxicating bond. Let me tell you about James. James was an investment broker who was also a high-functioning psychopath. He was universally loved. When he met a mark, he didn't boast or demand attention. He made the other person feel like the most interesting person in the room. He seemed to listen intently, only to extract vulnerabilities. He had a file for every person he met, documenting their insecurities, their fears, and their financial situation. His charm wasn't emotional, it was data collection in disguise. He used it to gain complete, unquestioned trust before he executed his frauds. The key difference. Narcissists' charm. Loud, demanding, centered on their own achievements and status. It's designed to attract admiration. Sociopaths' charm. Highly unstable, often disappears under stress and is typically deployed for short-term gain. It's designed for instant gratification. Psychopaths' charm. Smooth, chameleon-like, and relentless. It's designed to establish control and access. This charm is so effective because it is impenetrable. There is no genuine, terrified child underneath the psychopath's mask, as there often is with the narcissist. When the psychopath's mask drops, there is only a void. The psychopath can switch from being your best friend to an unfeeling stranger in the blink of an eye because the emotion was never real to begin with. Practical application. If you meet someone who seems too perfect, too interested in you, too quick to form a deep, intense bond, run. The psychopath is trying to skip the relationship-building process and get straight to the exploitation phase. Are you swept up by someone who makes you feel important, or are you constantly being reminded of how important they are? The target of the charm tells you who is in danger. Understanding how they operate in different environments gives you the best chance of survival. They adapt their tactics, but the core motivations remain. Narcissist. The status seeker. They will undermine colleagues, take credit for others' work, and constantly vie for the corner office. They need public, high-status recognition. Their goal is climbing the ladder for the applause. Sociopath. The saboteur. They're unreliable, prone to sudden feuds, and often involved in unauthorized expense claims or petty theft. They will destroy team cohesion through impulsivity and poor planning. Their goal is immediate payoff or release of frustration. Psychopath. The manipulative manager. They rise high because they can make cold, ruthless decisions without remorse. They play people against each other, creating a high-stress environment where they are the only stable power center. Their goal is total control over the organization's structure. Narcissist. The patriarch, matriarch. They demand total, uncritical worship. Family members are accessories to their own greatness, and any dissent is met with furious, defensive rage. Sociopath. The volatile outcast. They are prone to addiction, financial crises, and sudden, dramatic feuds. They burn bridges through recklessness and impulsive harm, then try to frantically rebuild them when they need something. Psychopath. The quiet disruptor. They systematically isolate family members, pitting spouse against spouse or child against parent, purely to watch the conflict unfold and to maintain their position as the calm, reasonable center. Narcissist. The idealizer, devaluer. They love-bomb you to excess, then devalue you the moment you challenge their perfection. The relationship is a performance for external validation. Sociopath. The emotional roller coaster. Intense, passionate, and deeply chaotic. They are prone to infidelity driven by impulse, followed by tearful, desperate attempts at repair. The relationship is a turbulent source of instant emotional highs. Psychopath. The extractor. The relationship is always transactional. They move in fast, extract resources, and then vanish, often leaving behind a trail of confusion and debt. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was married to a sociopath. She said he wasn't always bad, sometimes he'd be genuinely loving. But then he'd steal her credit card, spend $5,000 in one night, and then weep uncontrollably the next morning. The sheer inconsistency and impulsivity are the hallmarks you must look for in the sociopath. I've given you a lot of information, and the real world is messy. To cut through the noise, I devised a simple, high-stakes filter. When you are assessing someone you suspect of being in the Dark Triad, ask yourself 3 questions and be brutally honest with the answers. Follows them. Their life is a chain of self-inflicted disasters, legal troubles, and broken relationships. The chaos is often unintentional. They are bad at planning and terrible at self-control. They are the victim of their own impulses. Orchestrates it. Their life appears clean and successful, but the lives of those around them are systematically destroyed. They create the chaos in others' lives to achieve an objective. They are the architect of others' misery. Orchestrates it. Their chaos is often loud, theatrical, and defensive. They initiate a conflict only when their image is threatened, creating a dramatic situation to deflect blame. They are the lead actor in the blame game. Hot. The narcissist's rage is hot fury. The sociopath's aggression is hot frustration. It feels messy and emotionally charged. Cold. Their aggression is flat, emotionless, and calculated. It is deployed efficiently, like a surgeon's scalpel to achieve a specific goal. If they hurt you, it's not because they hate you, but because it was the most expedient way to get what they wanted. Shame about getting caught. They regret the consequence, not the act. The sociopath might express a fleeting, self-pitying regret. The psychopath will only express frustration. Shame about failure. They feel profound, existential shame if their perceived perfection is shattered. This is the deepest trigger for their defensive rage. They are not ashamed of the harm they caused, but ashamed of the flaw that caused them to harm. Let me give you a test case. A colleague is fired for embezzling. 1. If they immediately blame the company for underpaying them and start a massive social media smear campaign, they're likely the narcissist. 2. If they immediately try to flee the state with no plan, using a fake identity that instantly fails, they're likely the sociopath. 3. If they quietly confess, but only after they've successfully transferred the money to an offshore account, and set up a complex legal defense that pins the blame on an unsuspecting subordinate, they're the psychopath. We've focused on the psychopath and sociopath, but we need to quickly reinforce the core mechanism of the narcissist, because it's the one that most people confuse with the others. The narcissist is built on a foundation of profound, unacknowledged insecurity. Every single action, from the grand boast to the subtle put-down, is a desperate attempt to patch this massive hole in their soul. They are terrified that they are not special, not worthy, and fundamentally flawed. The grandiosity is the armor that protects the weak interior. Psychological insight. This links back to early developmental issues, often involving emotionally distant or overly critical parents. The child develops a false self, a perfect, grandiose image, because the true self was unacceptable. They become addicted to external validation because they cannot validate themselves internally. Let me tell you about Edna. Edna was a narcissistic client I dealt with, a woman who constantly needed her life to look like a magazine cover. One night, her daughter spilled wine on an expensive rug. Edna didn't rage about the cost of the rug. She flew into a terrifying, sustained rage about how the stain ruined the aesthetic of the room and what the neighbors would think. The wine stain wasn't a material loss, it was a symbolic assault on her carefully curated image of perfection. Protection strategy. You cannot reason with the narcissist's insecurity. Trying to tell them you are a good person only provides them a momentary fix before they need another. The only long-term defense is to recognize that their rage and demands are not about you. They are about their own terrifying self-doubt. Once you internalize this, their insults lose their sting. Do their most vicious attacks seem designed to hurt you, or do they seem designed to make themselves feel taller? When they are lashing out, they are actually fighting the fear inside their own head. Your strategy for survival must be tailored to the specific threat. Here's the final guide on what you need to do, based on which monster you're dealing with. The goal: low supply. Go gray rock. Make yourself boring. Give short, factual answers. Do not show emotion. When they brag, don't admire. When they rage, don't defend. You are not their audience. Set hard boundaries. Say no clearly and calmly. If they escalate, immediately disengage. For example, I will not discuss this if you raise your voice and then hang up the phone. Consistency starves their ego. The goal: high friction. Increase accountability. Do not trust their memory or their promises. Document everything, especially financial dealings. Demand payment in certified funds, not checks. Limit opportunities. Their impulsivity thrives in chaos. Never lend them money, never let them stay just for a few days, and never give them access to your resources. Their next desperate act should happen as far away from you as possible. The goal: low utility. Become useless. They only use people who have something they want. Stop providing resources. Do not give them a dramatic reaction. Once you cease to be a tool, they will discard you quickly, seeking an easier, more useful mark. Be publicly skeptical. A psychopath's greatest threat is exposure. If you have to deal with them, ensure it is always in the presence of a neutral third party. This introduces friction and risk they don't want. I've laid out the rules of the game for you. The world is full of these types, and your best defense is not your feelings but your facts. Know who you are dealing with and act accordingly. I am ready to generate the supporting content package.